Okay, so bit of a special request one, this one. Something a little bit different because we're not going to be doing the usual sort of really strictly guided tutorial piece here. This is a response to a request from a friend of mine and a patron who wanted to know how to paint a quick, simple and very effective workup for Blood Angels power armor. And that's something I can help with. That's something very dear to my own heart. Blood Angels, one of my favorite legions. Horus Heresy, obviously very, very big news at the moment. And so I wanted to offer him some help with that. And we're going to be using just these three colors to primarily work up our Blood Angels power armor. But then there will be a couple of other things that we introduce after that. And we'll get to that when we get to it. I did not buy the Heresy box, as you may know if you watched my recent video that, sorry, upset a couple of people. So we are just using 3D printed Mark 6 Marine here. This is a free sculpt. I've not paid anybody for copying GW's property here. No one's made any money off this. It's a free sculpt that I've downloaded for free. And I'm just using it as an example because said friend is going to want to paint on Heresy Mark 6 Marines, so this is the easiest way for me to provide them with an example of that. So yeah, join me, and I will warn in advance, this is going to be quite airbrushy, at least for the first part. So if you don't have an airbrush, obviously stippling, rattle cans, you know the usual excuses. If you don't have an airbrush, there are other ways you can follow these techniques, but we are going to be using an airbrush today, so let's get on with it. Okay, so loaded up in my airbrush, I have got some of this heavy green black from Viejo game color. This stuff here, game extra opaque, heavy black green. It's a very, very handy color, and that's what we're going to be starting off our Blood Angels with. There we go, spray and clean. And we're just going to spray all over the power armor here. It doesn't matter if we hit the gun, etc., but we're not going to be going out of our way to hit that, so if you miss it, great. If you don't, whatever. Okay, and when finished with that, you are going to be left with something which you'd be forgiven if you felt looked a lot like a Dark Angel, not a Blood Angel. And that would be a fine thing to think. Because indeed, this is a very dark green miniature all of a sudden. But bear with us, we are going to move on to the next stage now, which will again be airbrush, and we're going to load up the airbrush this time with Vermilion from, again, Viejo, at this time from the model color line. Vermilion, this is a really nice, bright, saturated red. It's going to be perfect for what we're going for here. Okay, for the next part of our process then, we're going to start zenithly applying the red. If you don't know what zenithly means, as if the red was coming from the zenith of the light source, so essentially from above. We're going to hit, first of all, like a blanket coat of red, and then we're going to go in and we're going to start to just focus up on some specific parts that we want to reinforce. Okay, and after your first coat of that Vermilion is dry, the first thing you're going to notice is that it does dull down quite a lot over that green. You're going to have to go in and reinforce it a little. So I've just dropped the pressure down now, and you'll see that this gives me a much more controllable spray pattern. And I'm now just going to go in and specifically pick where I want my highlights to live and just reinforce them with red. Okay, so as you can see, we've got a fairly convincing looking bit of Blood Angels power armor here. It's got that really nice dark green undershading when we hold it this way, but when we look at it in the normal way that we look at a miniature, it looks very red, very Blood Angels, very happy. I am just going to do, and this is optional, you don't have to do this by any means, but I'm going to do just a little reinforcement highlight. So I've just added a bit of the sunny skin tone that I also had out previously. That's this colour here. I've just added a small amount of this to my red now, and you can see that it just gives me a brighter red, and I'm going to do a little tiny bit of reinforcing highlight. I wouldn't necessarily recommend doing this on your rank and file, on your every troop, but for your character models, for example, great idea, and so I thought it was worth just showing you that one extra push step that you can include for not a lot of extra time. So let's quickly do that. Okay, so with that optional step out of the way, there's just one final step I want to do now. Now that we've got a good bit of light and shadow planned in, and we kind of know where we're going with this, I just want to enrich the red now, bring it back up to being nice and bright, because obviously you do lose a bit when you airbrush on those sort of brighter highlights. So we're just going to pull this back now to a nice bright red, and that's very, very simple to do. We're just going to mix an airbrush glaze, so just a very, very, very thin mix of this gory red from Game Color. We're going to apply it all over the model. That's going to just bring it now back to that bright, saturated tone. Okay, so I've got about 6 or 7 minutes total footage. Obviously this edited, it's going to be a lot shorter for you, but I've got about 6 or 7 minutes of total footage here, and this power armor is, for all intents and purposes, done. I absolutely could now start adding a bunch of edge highlights and stuff, and I'm actually going to show you how much more you can do to bring this to a stage of proper completion. But for a rank and flank troop, for your average soldier, by the time you've got the blacks and the silvers on over this airbrush work, you're talking probably 10 or 15 minutes per model. So you're talking, you know, an hour will get you nearly half a squad. 2.5 hours, say, will get you a squad of 10. Maybe 5-hour big painting session will get you a big blob of 20 done. And I think that's a pretty nice standard. But we're going to finish this properly. I'm going to tell you how long it takes me to finish properly. So I'm going to do a few edge highlights. I'm going to black out all of the areas that need to be black. I'm going to paint in the silvers. I'm going to put in a few basic highlights of grey on those black areas as well. We'll take it all the way to a proper state of finished completion. I'll do that off camera, and then I'll come back in and I will show you what we get as an end result. Okay, so that's the blacks painted in first of all. I was going to go all the way to the end, but I figured I may as well just, you know, keep chiming in and showing you. This is just Vallejo matte black, and I've just painted in all the areas that need to be black. As you can see on the model, the little areas between the soft parts and all that, the pouches, the gun, that kind of thing. And it was 1:45 by my clock when I started, and including the time that I've been talking to you about this, messing around getting the camera framed up right and all that kind of thing, it's now 1:51. So in terms of actual painting, probably took me 4 minutes to black everything out. That means we're probably at a sum total of around 10 minutes so far, and I mean, to be fair, if you just chucked some basing on that, you'd get away with that as a minimum battlefield ready model. But we are going to take it further, of course. So next up, I'm going to paint some metallics onto this thing. And then when I come back, it will have some metallics on it. Okay, so again, about another bang on 5 minutes have passed, and I've now got silver on everything. So we're now at about 15 minutes. And like, this is definitely fine, right? We could apply an all-over oil wash to this, which I am going to do at the end. I'm going to do an oil wash at the very, very end, after all the highlights are done and everything, which is just going to give us all of our shading all at once, much quicker. But you could see how if we just dump that oil wash on now, we would have something that looks really, really nice. And no one's going to be mad at this. You're not going to be mad at this. You're going to be really happy to take this into battle. But I am also going to just add some highlights as well. So vermilion and sunny skin tone mixed together are going to make my highlights for my reds. I'll probably show you a little bit of that actually, because that's quite an interesting process. And then usually just black plus sunny skin tone for my greys, to be honest, just because it works and it uses a colour that I've already got out. And we'll get all the blacks and all the reds highlighted. So let's get on with that. Like I say, I will probably show you a little bit of the reds. I won't show you the blacks, that's kind of boring. Okay, so one of the reasons I said I was going to show you the reds specifically is because, you know, obviously, like, there are areas that you just know to highlight, right? Like top facing edges and stuff like that. Everyone knows to catch those when they're doing their highlight schemes. It's not really that hard to remember. It's pretty obvious. The light source is above, so things facing up get a highlight. Something we often forget is actually the value of adding highlights to bottom facing surfaces. So surfaces like the underside of this shoulder pad here, because when we get right back into this really dark contrasted part here, it starts to look very, very nice to see that stark highlight against it. So I do like to just remind people, run those edge highlights, at least the first stage of your edge highlights, run them all the way down into your shadows. It looks really, really nice. You certainly won't regret it. So yeah, I'll just get on with just scribbling in some really quick highlights here. You can see I'm not being careful. I'm talking to you in real time as I'm doing this, so you can see how fast I'm moving my brush. I'm not taking my time. I'm just getting it on. And if I do make any mistakes, I can just as easily hide those by painting scratches and the like. So I have absolutely nothing to fear. I have no reason to take my time. This is a tabletop model, or a, you know, we're probably going for a kind of high tabletop here, I guess. But we really have nothing to be anxious about, because with Space Marine power armor, any mistakes you make can just become scratches. It really doesn't matter if you cock up at any point. So you can just get on with it, get it in, get it on. Happy days. Okay, I will finish this off camera, and I will come back to you shortly. We have a few stages of edge highlights on now. Like I say, this is really optional at this point. How many stages of edge highlights you do, whether you want to do them at all, totally up to how fast you think you are as a painter, how stressful you find them, but you can see you really don't have to be neat. Any mistakes you make with those edge highlights, you can just turn them into scratches. I also filled the eyes in on this. I painted for about a total of 12 minutes more, which still brings this whole model to under half an hour. This is still a sub 30-minute Space Marine. And we're gonna do one final process to this now, and then we're gonna have a quick wrap up where we look at the result and we talk about one of the important learning things that we can take away from this. Now then, as I said, there is one final stage I want to do, and I'm now ready to do that. I've just given the miniature a very quick hit with some gloss varnish. This is Viejo Mecha gloss varnish. It's an airbrush varnish. That's what I use. Use what you want. Use a rattle can, use an airbrush, whatever you like. Quick hit of gloss varnish, and then we're going to hit it with some Soilworks oil wash, which is this is just a black oil wash that's made by Scale Color. You can get this from Element Games. There's probably a bunch of other places that do it as well. It just saves you thinning black oil paint. I've got black oil paint, I've got thinners, but this is just something that's straight out the bottle. So I'm just going to grab some of this, and I'm just going to dab it all over this miniature, the entire miniature. Now, if you're new to oil washing or oil products in general, you might well be looking at this now and assuming that I've lost the plot, or at least just thinking, well, it looks like a right mess. It doesn't look good, doesn't look right. What have you done, etc., etc. This is actually exactly what we're going for. This is what we want it to look like at this stage, and you're about to find out why. So I always say with these oil wash products, it's always good to just get them kind of starting to dry before you start trying to remove them. And that's what we're going to do next. I've just given it a quick blow with the hairdryer, and now we're going to start removing it. And we're going to pick the areas where our highlights live, and we're going to work downwards. So you can see instantly, look at this coming back to life, turning into a beautifully shaded miniature. It really is a very instant gratification kind of painting technique, and that's why I love it, because you get results straight away, and you can see how good those results are going to look straight away. Really, really worth just investing, you know, £1 for a litre of white spirit, £4 for a tube of black oil paint. Getting into doing this, do buy obviously fairly good quality black oil paint. It can go cloudy, streaky, or otherwise not very nice to look at if you use crap oil paint, but other than that, you can see, I mean, this technique kind of speaks for itself. We went from, oh, that's not really looking super Blood Angel-y, to, well, looking super Blood Angel-y, if I do say so myself. It also has the nice effect of creating quite a sort of grimy, streaky, dirty look while it's at it. So what you're going to find is you kind of get a bit of free weathering at the same time, which for the aesthetics of Horus Heresy is of course perfect. Heresy fans, one of the things that they're drawn to, in particular about the setting, or so they tell me, and certainly when I think about the Horus Heresy setting and why I enjoy it so much, it's that it really is the grimmest and the darkest of the grimdark. You know, 40k, as it strives to become a bit more mainstream appealing, can start to lose a bit of its grimness and a bit of its darkness, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. Not everything has to be, grim and dark in the world of Warhammer, but in the case of Horus Heresy, it really makes sense for the setting to lean into that, and it does so very effectively. So as you can see, I'm just removing this oil wash now. This takes, like I said, seconds really. You can sit there and you can keep working at it, or you can just kind of call it done pretty immediately. It really just lets you decide your own level of involvement, how much you want to take off, how you want to take it off, whether you want to leave it looking fairly clean, fairly dirty. If you're not a fan of the effect that you get by removing it with a brush like this, you can also get these makeup sponge removers, which do a great job of taking it off in a more sort of dabbing the surface kind of way. You see, I'm still getting really nice removal there, but it is a bit of a different type of removal that I'm getting. Gives a bit of a different look, perhaps. So that's something worth bearing in mind. If you want to try that, by all means try that. Okay, and here is what we end up with. After the oil wash has dried, I've just put a little bit of matte varnish over the top of that, and then I've just based very simply with some black sand, you know, Istvan kind of styly, bit of shrubbery there. Very, very simple stuff, but doesn't that look fine and dandy for half an hour's work, maybe 35 minutes. It depends how quick you are with manipulating the oil wash more than anything. That's probably going to be the main thing that's a bit of a variable, because a lot of people probably just won't have the experience with it to be fast at first. But the thing you have to bear in mind, and this is the important lesson that I said I wanted to talk about at the end, is that when we do processes like this, the time it takes to do it on one model, we don't just multiply that by 10 for doing 10 models, because most of these processes get more efficient if you're doing them on more models at a time. And so that's the really great thing about something like this. The initial spraying of green might take 4 or 5 minutes to do on one model because of filling the airbrush up, getting the mix right, testing that the pressure's coming through okay, setting up and everything. But doing 10 models, you're probably adding about 30 more seconds per model, not 4 minutes more per model, and so on and so on. So as you can see, a process like this, or a set of processes like this, could lead to some really, really nice, really, really quick and really, really tasty looking Blood Angels in not too much time. And I think if you want a nice dirty look for your Horus Heresy Blood Angels, this is the way I would go. So peace out from me, thank you for watching, hope you enjoyed it. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I will see you in the next one, folks. Thanks a lot, bye for now.